My name is Håvard. I work as a developer here at the office in Bergen. And today I'm going to talk about what to expect from Azure API Management. So let's just jump right in. This is the sales pitch that you get if you visit the documentation on Microsoft's page. API Management is a way to create consistent and modern API gateways for existing backend services. So what does this mean? Let's just quickly explain what an API gateway is. Let's say you have, this is my drawing by the way, so good. This is an example of just a normal system. You have some clients, they have some services that they talk to with some databases. A gateway just sits in between the clients and the backend services, making it more consistent for the consumers of the APIs. And it works as a boundary between the client and the backend services. It receives every API call and then determines what service to call, so that the client don't have to. Yes, this is a more real-life example taken from the documentation. So Azure API Management sits here in the middle. And as you can see, it's more than just an API gateway, but that's the main part of it. So what does API Management provide to you as a developer? So first off, security. Now that you have an API, a gateway sitting between the outside world and your backend services, this is going to be the only entry point that you have, which makes securing your applications a lot simpler. Some of the mechanisms that API Management support out of the box is API keys or subscriptions, so you can create user groups or give out keys for specific developers, and also determine what API calls they are allowed to make. If you have some Auth2 service running, then you can use that type of authentication and everything works out of the box. If you have Azure AD, you can use that. Client certificates, IP restrictions, and if you are anticipating a lot of requests, then you can add some rate limiting to make sure that everything is stable and that you don't, and also to add some protection against DDoSing. And yeah. Okay, so what else does it provide? Discoverability. With that I mean that out of the box it comes with its own landing page, which automatically generates documentations that you can distribute to consumers and developers using your APIs. This is just an example of what that landing page looks like. This is from the starter kit, and you can customize everything. You can also use Azure's own APIs to build your own website. And if you don't like any of the like sales pitch stuff, and you only want the Swagger documentation, you can take everything out. You can take out everything and just have the raw documentation. All right. Another thing that API Management provides or promises is usability. It's supposed to be it is very easy to get started and integrate with your existing backend services. If this is a REST API or a SOAP API, it doesn't matter. It supports a lot of different integrations. So this is just a screenshot from the view that you get in the Azure portal. So you can create APIs or import APIs using your OpenAPI specification. If you have this, you can provide a link or upload a file. You can also connect it directly to services running in Azure, if this is a serverless function or an app service or some logic app. You can also, if you have some SOAP APIs and you want them to be consistent with the rest of your platform, you can have API Management automatically convert this into a REST API. Some other more specific features. Versioning. It supports, or it doesn't care about what type of versioning you use or what scheme you use. It supports either path, query, or header versioning. And whatever you want to put there is fine by API management. It doesn't care if you want to use semantic versioning or just you want some kind of naming convention. It's all up to you how you use it. In addition to this, it also supports a concept of revisions. Revisions are more like temporary versions that you create in order to test out your application if you want to do breaking changes in your production API, or you want to change some configuration inside your API gateway. You can create a new revision, test it out, and then you can click one button and this is now the production. As you can see, you get all of your revisions listed up, so you can see more of a change log. And you can also roll back to a previous revision if something breaks. Yes. Okay, so the last main feature that I want to talk about is policies. What are policies? Policies is probably the most powerful feature of Azure API Management. And it's a way of changing the behavior of API requests using configuration. So it supports a configuration language that you can use to intercept and manage change incoming requests as well as outgoing responses from your backend services. And you mainly have two types of policies: inbound policies and outbound policies. So this is like the general pipeline that you have. You have some more intricate things, but just to keep things simple today, I've broken it down into inbound and outbound. A typical thing that you can do with inbound policies is maybe hit some cache instead of going to your backend and just return that response. You can add authentication, authorization. Maybe you just want to modify a query string or a header that you don't want every client to add. You can just add this to the request and it will be sent to the backend. Outbound policies. If you want to maybe remove some headers that the API returns for security reasons or just for consistency, you can do this here. You can store the response in the cache so that the next time somebody asks for some sort of data set, when they hit the inbound, it's going to return the cache instead. Other things that you can do is convert XML responses to JSON or the other way around. And it also supports a little bit of code. You can write a little bit of C# code inside of this configuration. So I think, in theory, you could create an entire API using just the policies. I wouldn't recommend it, and it's horrible to maintain. But for simple stuff, it works really well. All right. Some flavors. What price tiers or product tiers does Microsoft have? And they have like the basic tiers, like basic, standard, and premium, and you get basically the same thing, just a higher end or more scaling, or I think the SLA for the premium one is a little bit better than the rest. And you also have a consumption tier, which basically makes the entire gateway a serverless function, and it can scale infinitely. But it also is restrictive in what type of features that you have. So you don't get the development portal if you use the consumption. You don't get a consistent IP, so you can't do any IP restrictions, or you can't put it into a virtual network. Then you need to use one of the others. What you do though, you get 1 million free calls every month, which is nice if you want to test things out. And also, if you don't care about all of that extra stuff and you just want the gateway itself, then the consumption plan is the way to go. I think that's actually all I have time for. And if you want to talk to me about more of this, because I've only just touched on some of the topics, and there's so much more, I could probably talk 2 days about this. So just talk at me in the hallway or visit the link here to get started. Thank you.